January 4th, 1945. In the Sulu Sea, a single Japanese plane appears out of nowhere. Within seconds, the USS Ommaney Bay, an escort carrier packed with aircraft and ammunition, is transformed into a floating inferno. The vessel vanishes beneath the waves, taking with it the answers to what truly happened in its final, chaotic moments. For 74 years, her story was sealed in the abyss. But now, she has been found. What secrets can a wreck, torn apart by explosions a mile beneath the surface, tell us about the terrifying reality of a kamikaze attack? And how can this mangled steel finally solve a mystery that the survivors themselves could never fully explain? The answers lie in what was recently pulled from the depths, and what it reveals changes everything we thought we knew. The discovery of the USS Ommaney Bay was not just another shipwreck find. It was the culmination of nearly 8 decades of wondering, waiting, and searching. In July 2023, the Naval History and Heritage Command confirmed what many had suspected. The wreck had finally been located by Australian diving firms in the Sulu Sea. This twisted, broken hull on the seafloor represents more than just a sunken warship. It's the first time physical evidence has been recovered from a kamikaze attack that survivors couldn't fully piece together due to the speed and violence of the assault. The ship's demise was so rapid, so chaotic, that even those who lived through it struggled to explain the precise sequence of events that unfolded in those critical moments. But to understand what this wreck is telling us, we need to go back to the beginning, to when the Ommaney Bay was more than twisted steel on the ocean floor. She was designed to be expendable, but her crew had no idea just how prophetic that would become. The USS Ommaney Bay was a Casablanca-class escort carrier, laid down on October 6, 1943, at the Kaiser Company shipyard in Vancouver, Washington. Named after a bay in Alaska, she was one of 50 identical carriers mass-produced during the war, the most numerous class of aircraft carriers ever built. These ships were constructed in record time, with an average build time of just 5 months from keel laying to commission. At 512 feet long with a beam of 65 feet, she wasn't particularly large for an aircraft carrier. Displacing just over 10,000 tons fully loaded, she was practically a lightweight compared to the massive fleet carriers of the time. But what she lacked in size, she made up for in practicality. She carried 27 aircraft, typically a mix of Wildcat fighters and Avenger torpedo bombers, and cruised at a respectable 19 knots. Her defensive armament was modest, a single 5-inch gun mounted on her stern, complemented by 40mm and 20mm anti-aircraft guns. The thin flight deck offered minimal protection, just enough to land aircraft, not enough to withstand bombs. Captain Howard L. Young took command when she was commissioned on February 11, 1944. After fitting out at Astoria, Oregon, and shakedown trials in Puget Sound, the Ommaney Bay carried out her first mission in March, transporting aircraft and supplies to Brisbane, Australia. By late April, she was back in San Diego, conducting carrier qualification landings and combat drills. But these were just warm-ups. By August 1944, the Ommaney Bay had received her full air group and sailed for combat operations in the Pacific. She would first see action providing air cover for the invasions of Peleliu and Anguar in the Palau Islands. Then came her most significant early combat experience, the Battle of Leyte Gulf, in October 1944. As part of Taffy 2, a task unit commanded by Rear Admiral Felix Stump, Ommaney Bay's aircraft played a crucial role in one of the largest naval battles in history. During the battle off Samar on October 25th, her planes helped sink a Japanese cruiser and damaged several other enemy warships. It was during this period that the kamikaze threat intensified. The Imperial Japanese Navy was growing desperate. Their conventional tactics were not working. Vice Admiral Takajiro Onishi had formed the first Special Attack Unit in October 1944, officially sanctioning suicide attacks as a strategy. By December 1944, American ships were facing an increasingly deadly airborne threat pilots deliberately crashing their planes into vessels. The Ommaney Bay had already had a close call. On December 15, 1944, while supporting operations near Mindoro in the Philippines, she faced heavy Japanese air attacks. The ship's gunners managed to splash an enemy bomber as it dove for her port bow. The ship had escaped damage then, but luck is a finite resource in war. By January 1945, Ommaney Bay had been assigned to support the Allied landings at Leyte Gulf. The operation would take her through the treacherous the Sulu Sea, where Japanese air groups were known to be operating. On January 3rd, the carrier sailed from San Pedro Bay with the rest of her task group, entering the Sulu Sea with no idea of the fate that awaited her. Captain Young had taken extra precautions, installing additional lookouts on deck. But against what was coming, it would not be enough. By January 4th, 1945, the USS Ommaney Bay had survived countless missions. But this day would be different. What happened next lasted less than 2 minutes, but destroyed everything they'd built. On January 4th, 1945, at 5 in the afternoon, the Ommaney Bay was transiting the Sulu Sea west of the Philippines as part of a larger task group. The sea was calm, the skies partly cloudy. On her flight deck, fueled and armed Wildcat fighters sat ready, their wings folded back. Below deck in the hangar, more aircraft were packed tightly together, fully gassed and armed for the next day's operations. At 5 in the afternoon, radar operators detected approximately 15 Japanese aircraft, about 45 miles west of the task group. The ships went to general quarters, battle stations. But something odd happened. The radar contacts seemed to disappear. Many believed the Japanese aircraft had withdrawn. The tension eased slightly, though the ship remained at battle stations. What no one realized was that a lone Yokosuka P-1Y Ginga bomber, known to Allied crews as Francis, had detached from the main Japanese force. This twin-engine bomber, a relatively modern Japanese aircraft capable of carrying a significant bomb load, was piloted by a kamikaze volunteer. He had spotted the American task group and was now using the sun's glare and the radar gap to approach undetected. At 5:12 in the afternoon, lookouts finally spotted the enemy aircraft, far too late for effective evasive action. The kamikaze had perfectly timed his approach, diving out of the setting sun toward the Ommaney Bay's starboard side. Despite frantic anti-aircraft fire from the task force, the flaming Japanese plane, already hit and burning from defensive fire, continued its determined path. The P-1Y crashed into Ommaney Bay's flight deck on the forward starboard side at 5:13 in the afternoon. The impact was devastating. The plane's wings sliced across the superstructure, collapsing it onto the flight deck. But far worse was what followed. The kamikaze had released 2 bombs during its final dive. The first bomb penetrated the flight deck and detonated below, among the fully fueled aircraft in the forward third of the hangar deck. The second bomb tore through the hangar deck, ruptured the fire main on the second deck, and exploded close to the starboard side. The ship lost power immediately. Communication systems failed. And most critically, the ruptured fire main meant there was no water pressure forward to fight the rapidly spreading flames. The fully gassed planes in the hangar became a blazing inferno. A TBM torpedo bomber hit by the kamikaze's wreckage sparked another fire that consumed the aft section of the flight deck. Below decks, men were trapped in smoke-filled compartments. On the hangar deck, sailors attempting to fight the fires were driven back by the intense heat, black smoke, and the constant danger of exploding .50 caliber ammunition from the burning aircraft. The terrific blazes created an environment so hellish that nearby destroyer escorts could not approach close enough to help without risking their own vessels. By 5:45 p.m., just 32 minutes after impact, the situation had grown dire. Captain Young ordered the wounded to be evacuated first. By 5:50 p.m., the entire topside area had become untenable. Worse, the stored torpedo warheads in the burning ship threatened to detonate at any moment. The order that no captain ever wants to give came at 5:50 p.m. Abandon ship. Men jumped into the water or climbed down ropes and nets as the few functioning lifeboats were lowered. At 6:12 p.m., Captain Young became the last man to evacuate the burning wreck. Just 6 minutes later, at 6:18 p.m., the torpedoes stored in the aft end of the ship finally detonated. The massive explosion collapsed the flight deck and launched deadly debris onto the destroyers who were rescuing survivors. 2 crewmen from the destroyer Escort USS Eichenberger, who were aboard a motor whaleboat picking up survivors, were killed instantly when struck by this airborne debris. The once proud carrier, commissioned only 11 months earlier, was now a floating funeral pyre. At 7:58 p.m., under orders from Admiral Jesse B. Oldendorf, the destroyer USS Burns fired a torpedo into the crippled carrier, sending her to the bottom of the Sulu Sea. From first impact to scuttling, just 2 hours and 45 minutes had elapsed. But the critical sequence, from the moment the kamikaze appeared to the point where the ship was fatally wounded, had taken just 74 seconds. For the survivors, the silence was almost worse than the explosion. In the attack's aftermath, 93 of Ommaney Bay's crew were lost, along with the 2 sailors from the Eichenberger. Another 65 men suffered wounds of varying severity. But the ordeal wasn't over for the survivors. On January 6th and again on January 9th, the light cruiser USS Columbia was struck by kamikaze attacks, killing 7 men who had just been rescued from the Ommaney Bay. The official investigation struggled to piece together the sequence of events was chaotic. Survivor accounts varied widely, not because of fabrication, but because of the chaos and speed of the attack. Some recalled seeing the kamikaze approaching, others only remembered the explosion. Some thought multiple planes had struck the ship. The limited visibility, the rapid loss of power, and the immediate fires made a coherent timeline difficult to establish. For families of the lost, closure was elusive. Without physical remains or a known final resting place, grieving became an open-ended process. All they had were the Navy's condolence letters, a few personal effects, and the knowledge that their loved ones were somewhere in the Sulu Sea. For historians and naval tacticians, the loss of the Ommaney Bay provided sobering data. Kamikaze attacks were proving devastatingly effective against lightly armored vessels like escort carriers. The Navy began implementing new defensive tactics and structural modifications to other ships in the class, including enhanced firefighting capabilities and additional anti-aircraft guns. But perhaps most frustrating was the incomplete record. Without the physical evidence of the wreck, theories about exactly how the ship had been struck, what had failed first, and how the fires had spread so rapidly remained speculative. For 74 years, the ocean kept its secrets, until technology finally caught up with history. When the sonar first detected the anomaly, no one expected it to rewrite naval history. In 2019, Vulcan LLC provided the Naval History and Heritage Command with location data. What they believed might be the Ommaney Bay, but confirmation required more evidence. It would take another 4 years before a combination of survey information from the Seascan survey team and video footage from the DPT scuba dive team allowed naval historians to positively identify the wreck. What they found was a haunting tableau of destruction. The ship lay in 2 major sections, with debris scattered across the sea floor. The immense explosion from the torpedo warheads had clearly torn the vessel apart. But amidst this destruction, forensic evidence of the kamikaze attack remained. The remotely operated vehicle footage revealed critical details. The starboard side of the flight deck showed extensive damage consistent with the reported point of impact. The collapsed superstructure confirmed survivor accounts of the kamikaze's wing striking it before the main fuselage hit the flight deck. Most importantly, the pattern of internal damage confirmed how the 2 bombs had penetrated the ship's decks, creating the catastrophic conditions that made the vessel unsalvageable. Naval historians could now see exactly how the fire main had been ruptured, cutting off water pressure to the forward sections where it was most desperately needed. They could trace the path of the explosion that had originated in the hangar deck, where tightly packed aircraft with full fuel tanks had created the perfect environment for an unstoppable conflagration. Perhaps most significantly, the wreck revealed how quickly a modern warship could be rendered helpless by a determined kamikaze. The 74 seconds between first sighting and fatal damage were not an exaggeration. They were confirmed by the physical evidence. For the first time, the physical evidence allowed naval archaeologists to fully understand the mechanics of a successful kamikaze attack, information that had been previously obscured by the chaos of combat and the limitations of survivor testimony. The wreck does not just show how the Ommaney Bay died, it shows how her crew lived in their final moments. Some discoveries are about finding what was lost. Others are about finding what was never understood. The identification of the USS Ommaney Bay wreck in July 2023 brought a measure of closure to the families of those lost. Naval History and Heritage Command Director Samuel J. Cox said that this discovery allows the families of those lost some amount of closure and gives us all another chance to remember and honor their service to our nation. The wreck site now serves as a permanent memorial, a grave marker for the 95 men who made the ultimate sacrifice. Under U.S. law, it is protected as a military gravesite under the jurisdiction of the Department of the Navy. Beyond its memorial significance, the discovery has profound historical value. It has finally allowed historians to solve the 74-year mystery of exactly how kamikaze attacks could so rapidly destroy even vessels that were battle-ready. The forensic evidence from the wreck has validated survivor accounts while filling crucial gaps in understanding. For naval architects and military planners, the lessons remain relevant. The vulnerability of warships to determine suicide attacks continues to influence defensive systems and tactics to this day. The Ommaney Bay's story is a sobering reminder of the devastating effectiveness of asymmetric warfare. But perhaps the most important aspect of this discovery is how it honors the human cost. Each bent bulkhead and twisted girder represents not just the physics of destruction, but the human stories that unfolded in those desperate minutes. The damage control teams fighting impossible fires, the medical personnel treating wounded shipmates, and the officers making the painful decision to abandon ship. The USS Ommaney Bay is no longer lost at sea. She is a permanent memorial to courage, sacrifice, and the enduring human need to understand our past. The ocean hides countless war graves like the Ommaney Bay. If you are fascinated by these underwater discoveries, hit subscribe to Ocean Attacks for more deep-sea historical investigations. Comment below with questions about naval archaeology and share this video to honor the memory of the Ommaney Bay's crew. Until next time, the depths await.